Hey guys, welcome back. It's Al from Altruistic Channel, and so let's talk about the next little segment I wanted to do on for this particular topic regarding the collective consciousness and the basics, right? So one of the things that I always find interesting is that people argue the points between logic and reasoning and spirituality and faith. So I always find it funny that people kind of separate those things because it was a logical mind that decided to question whatever it was that they were encountering that led to either spirituality and faith in the ability to answer that quest, or that a spiritual nature and intuitive quality made them think spiritually to have faith to define what was happening, which would then be logic and reasoning. It's a circular thing. And so it's always important for me to point out that as you go through the process of any type of learning, that you remember that everything has its place and that everything typically is related to one another. It's why the sacred geometry symbol of the spiral is so important, is because all things interconnect. And since we're talking about the collective consciousness, it's just good to ground everybody in the reality, which is everybody can be right at one time if looked at from different perspectives. So for this particular area, I just wanted to point out that there are different religions throughout the world that argue back and forth over the name and title of things, and they use it as a divisive manner of causing conflict and to bring drama into the world. The collective consciousness works against that. So basically, it is a welcoming place of all faiths and hope, right? Because without faith, you cannot want hope. That is what it is. Faith and hope are in tandem with each other. Not necessarily always the same exact thing, but they are a balance. So when you're looking at this overall topic, just make sure that you ground yourself in what you find to be reality. So this goes back to what I use in the Moon with No Kingdom in the book on Amazon, which is if you are a scientist and you say that you are free of any type of faith-based principality, then you cannot be a man of science, because you are basically stating that you are trying to sometimes prove things that are not real because you know that they are real, which would then be faith. And then to further make that point go, if you are even doing science or even practicing science or mathematics or anything that is calculated, you are placing faith that you have the ability to answer the question above and beyond anything else. So you're placing faith in humanity. So everything is interconnected. Everybody has some form of faith or some that leads to hope in something. The reason is because it sets our goals in motion. It's that intuitive quality that gets the ego going. It's everything that is divine is representative in this idea of thought. And thought is a reaction to something else. So it's all circular. So having said that, when you go into the collective consciousness and you are seeking essentially growth, you're asking for the spiritual alignment between yourself and your soul. And you're acknowledging a higher being or a higher design that exists, that is kind of controlling things in a kind of fatherish type of way. So there are a couple things to use in logic and reason that would help you guide yourself into understanding if something's true or not for you. First and foremost, nothing is ever true until you see it and then believe it to be true for yourself. Otherwise, it's not true. It's false. And the only truth in the world is love, right? Love and light. And dark, because those would be all set together. So love, hate, dark, and light. Those are four things that always exist with anything. So if you choose to use logic and reasoning in those terms, you will always find a balancing agent to a truth. So where you find something that you hold value to, that you will find something that you don't like at all. And a lot of times that is found within that dynamic between the body and the soul purpose. And so when we say to do the work, which is the next thing that I will be talking about, you first have to apply logic and reason to if it even applies to you. Are you at a place that you're even questioning that you would like to grow with God or grow with Allah or grow with whatever your spiritual nature is? Do you find something lacking in your life? Is there something triggering your response to seek something greater than yourself? Are you trying to make something better? These are all core questions that basically ask fundamental things that you need to look at before you dive into something like the collective consciousness or in spirituality, or specifically what I'm doing, which is bonding all of the agents together in your everyday to-day action, right? Like that's very important to me. I aim to deal with the leaders of leaders. I'm dealing with people who have long past limitations and are now working on on breaking through glass ceilings and making sure that we see the future. Pioneers, innovators, people like that. Because at some point you reach that plateau state, and there is no sense in staying there for too long, right? You know that there's something more. So I'm speaking to that dynamic. But with the basics conversation, just remember that you're asking questions that you want true answers to. Typically what happens is you get awakened, right? You awaken yourself to the reality that you have not been fully either invested in your life or fully invested in your growth process as a spiritual being. Because suddenly what you thought was true starts to fall all by the wayside, and you start to find out that things are not the way that they seem. Now, you can get stuck in a phase where you're like, why have I been deceived? And then just get stuck in discernment, trying to figure things out. But then I would always caution you to remember one thing. Do you want to know the answer to all things? And the reason I say that is because when you quest for expansion, you're questing for answers that you may not want. And until you're ready to actually get those answers sometimes, maybe it's not the right moment for you to quest forward. And I do say that because as I ascended, you become privy to things that you didn't want to know, and you have to be able to live with it going forward. And that's a very key lesson in life as you get to the ascension process. But for the basics, if you're questing for knowledge, are you able to talk the talk and walk the walk? And so if the answer is yes, then it goes into an introspective aspect where you start to look at the traits that you possess or the things that you do or do not like about yourself. Things that you almost go into a SWOT analysis of you. Right? As a leader, you all understand the SWOT analysis. But you're now doing it internally, and you're looking at yourself hardcore, and you're going to then have to address the things that you don't like in a way that's new, through a different perspective, and sublimely guided. Which means that it's not going to always be in the way that you want it to be. You have no control over it at some point because you are enacting parts of yourself that you're not willing to deal with. You're just tapping the surface and going, okay, you're next, and then trying not to follow through. And that's where the divine enters, and that's what reinforces these pivotal moments in your life that things just go to shit in a handbasket. And you're kind of like, I didn't want to do that. So always know that you are committed to your expansion because everything that you're going to encounter is a result of what you are or who you are. And it's all things that you think of. Typically, when you're on this quest for expansion, you're looking for basically not only showing up for yourself, and not only the alignment between the soul and the body, and a thorough understanding that you must work in tandem with the parties, the three, mind, body, and soul, working together as one on a mission of expansion, on a way to something else. So you're thinking beyond the terms of just me. It's not an I statement anymore. It's a we statement. And you're working towards giving yourself leverage to understand what it means to be part of the collective, being part of the divine energy that is all-knowing. That is what we're essentially trying to get to next, right? So you're trying to become part of a community of people who are like-minded. And so the thing to always remember is that since no two brains operate the same way, it is super important while you're doing this key basic part to learn your voice and your truth during the process. Document as much as you can. I find this to be very important because later on in life you may need to go back and not relive the experience, and in order to avoid that and having to go backwards, it's usually important to look at what you noted there about a specific time frame that brings back the feeling and that frequency, that energy, and you go, okay, I don't need to live that again. Let me just go from what I understand. So all of it plays a big part, but you first have to hear your voice. And this is the part where you understand when you're at oneness and you're starting to fall in alignment with your purpose of soul and body. You'll get to a point where you will start to commune with yourself, and you will literally sit and usually quietly, separated from everybody else and almost like an isolation, either by divine guidance or just by yourself, that you could just separate yourself. Because you're questing to find out what your core beliefs are. And in that process, what I ask you to do is to be honest, brutally honest with yourself. Because no matter what you're thinking, and no matter how evil you think you are, or how vicious you think you are, and what you're capable of doing, without looking at that aspect of yourself during this key process of foundation laying, you're going to have to face it on a physical way in life, as a spiritual being. And that can be a lot more detrimental. So just understand that the basics and core foundations are important to lay just right, and take ownership for if you're actually even committed to expanding your horizons and growing to be able to create what it is that the divine energy is offering you. And that's it for this little segment. I hope you guys are having a great night. That's Al for Altruistic Channels. I'll see you later.